Millionaire mother listens to black cleaning lady teaching 9 languages to her autistic son. Her life changes forever. Can you explain why you are talking to my son? Victoria Blackwell's cold voice echoed through the marble hall of the $40 million mansion. At 38, heiress to a pharmaceutical empire, she looked with contempt at the scene before her, a black woman in a blue apron sitting on the floor next to her 7-year-old autistic son. Luana Santos, 34, stood up calmly and straightened the cleaning supplies. She had been working in that house for 3 months, always invisible, always silent. No one knew that she had been a linguistics professor at 3 universities before losing everything and accepting any job that would pay the bills for her sick mother. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwell. I was just. You were just what? Victoria interrupted, walking toward them with her Louboutin heels echoing like hammers on the floor. Oliver hasn't spoken to anyone in 2 years. No one. And now I find you here, filling his head with, what exactly? The boy Oliver remained seated on the floor with an illustrated book in his hands. His blue eyes sparkled in a way Luana recognized immediately. It wasn't a disability, it was pure intelligence waiting for the right key. I was just cleaning and he came over, Luana lied partially. The truth was that in recent weeks, she had noticed how Oliver reacted when she murmured words in different languages while she worked. First it was French, then Spanish, until yesterday when he whispered his first word in months, hola. Victoria took the book from her son's hands. A book in Italian? Where did that come from? From the library, ma'am. I was reorganizing and you thought you could use my son as an experiment? Victoria's eyes flashed. He has severe autism. He doesn't speak, he doesn't interact, he doesn't learn. 3 of the best specialists in the country have confirmed it. Luana felt something burn in her chest. It wasn't anger, it was recognition. She had seen that same look in dozens of children who had been labeled lost causes, by people who couldn't see beyond their own limitations. With all due respect, Mrs. Blackwell, Luana said, her voice maintaining a calm that only exists in those who have faced much worse storms. Sometimes children just need to be heard in the language that makes sense to them. Victoria laughed dismissively. You, a cleaning lady, are giving me advice about my own son? About a child you've known for 3 months. It's not advice, Luana replied, crouching down again beside Oliver. It's just possibilities. That's when it happened. Oliver looked up from the floor, looked directly at Luana, and whispered something that made Victoria stagger, Merci, madam. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria blinked several times, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. He spoke French. Luana nodded, her eyes shining with contained satisfaction. Children like Oliver aren't broken, Mrs. Blackwell. They just speak a different language than we do. Victoria looked at her son, then at Luana, then back at Oliver, who was now leafing through the Italian book with genuine interest. For the first time in 2 years, there was life in her boy's eyes. How did you know? Victoria whispered, her arrogance momentarily replaced by confusion. Luana smiled, not a smile of victory, but the smile of someone who holds secrets too powerful to reveal before the time is right. Let's just say I've been on the other side of this conversation before. There, in that cold hall of a mansion where money bought everything but understanding, a woman everyone preferred to ignore had just planted the first seed of a transformation no one could have imagined. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have respected you, then you know that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply to show what you're capable of. Sign up to find out how a simple cleaning lady transformed not only the life of a child, but completely rewrote the rules of a family that thought money could buy any solution. The next morning, Victoria had made her decision. She called Luana into her private office, where stacks of contracts and photographs of charity events decorated the walls like trophies of her moral superiority. I need to clear up a few things, Victoria began, without inviting Luana to sit down. What happened yesterday was a coincidence. Oliver sometimes makes random noises. It doesn't mean anything. Luana remained standing, her hands clasped in front of her body. I understand, ma'am. I want you to keep your distance from him. 0 interaction. Victoria paused, watching Luana with growing contempt. In fact, maybe you should focus exclusively on the basement and the service areas. The housekeeper Sandra will take care of where Oliver circulates. If she only knew, Luana thought. If she knew that I have a PhD in applied linguistics from Columbia University, that my specialization is cognitive development and multilingualism in neurodivergent children, that I have published 17 articles in international scientific journals. Of course, Mrs. Blackwell. Just cleaning. But Victoria wasn't finished. And since we're talking about boundaries, she leaned back in her chair, a cruel smile dancing on her lips. I hope you weren't fooled by what happened yesterday. Oliver is severely autistic. 3 of the best neurologists in the country have confirmed it. He won't get better, he won't speak normally, he won't have a normal life. Each word was a calculated stab, but Luana kept her expression serene. Inside, she thought of the 43 cases she had followed, the children labeled lost, who now attended universities, spoke multiple languages, had brilliant careers. I understand your concern, ma'am. Concern. Victoria laughed dismissively. It's not concern. It's reality. And I'd rather my son not be used as an experiment by unqualified people. That afternoon, while reorganizing products in the basement, Luana heard footsteps on the stairs. It was Dr. Marcus Chun, the family's private pediatrician, coming down with a thoughtful expression. Sorry to interrupt, he said, looking around to make sure they were alone. I need to talk to you about Oliver. Luana stopped organizing the products. Is something wrong? On the contrary. Yesterday, when I heard him speak French, it was the first spontaneous verbal communication in 2 years. Dr. Chen approached her, lowering his voice. I've been a doctor for 20 years. I know when a child is responding to specific stimuli, and I know when he's just making random sounds. Luana's heart raced. And what do you think happened? Do you have a background in special education? For a moment, Luana hesitated. Telling the truth could change everything, or ruin everything. She studied his face, looking for signs that she could trust him. Dr. Chun, if I told you that I have a PhD in applied linguistics and that I spent 5 years specializing in child cognitive development, what would you do with that information? The silence that followed was loaded with possibilities. Dr. Chun blinked several times, as if processing the information. You're telling me you have a PhD? Columbia University. My thesis was on multilingualism in neurodivergent children. I've published 17 articles in international scientific journals. My God, he sat down on a nearby box. What is a doctor of linguistics doing working as a cleaning lady? Luana took a deep breath. Life happens, doctor. I lost my job at the university after my mother got sick. I needed money fast to pay for her treatment. That was a year ago. Dr. Chun shook his head, processing. And Oliver? Do you think you can help him? I don't think. I know. He's not severely autistic as diagnosed. He has characteristics of the spectrum, yes, but he mainly suffers from selective mutism combined with high auditory sensitivity. His mother treats him as if he were broken, so he has completely shut down. How do you know that? 43 similar cases, doctor. Over the past 5 years, I've worked with 43 children with similar diagnoses. Today, 38 of them speak multiple languages fluently and lead completely normal lives. Dr. Chun was silent for a few long seconds. Oliver has an appointment with me tomorrow. Victoria wants to increase his medication, says he's regressing and fantasizing. He's not regressing. He's progressing. For the first time in 2 years, he's found a form of communication that makes sense to him. I know. Dr. Chun took a card out of his pocket. My private number. If you're willing to help this boy, I'll find a way to provide medical support for your work. But it will have to be discreet. After he left, Luana stood alone in the basement, holding the card. For the first time in months, a plan began to form in her mind. That night, while Victoria was having dinner with friends at the social club, Luana did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She called her old university. Linguistics Department, Professor Williams. James, it's Luana Santos. There was a long silence on the other end. Luana? Where have you been? Your research was cited in 3 international journals this month. Harvard has been trying to contact you for 6 months. I'm in a temporary situation. But I need a favor. I need my research files, especially the intervention protocols for selective mutism. An hour later, Luana hung up the phone with something she hadn't felt in a long time: renewed hope. James would discreetly send her everything she needed to develop a personalized program for Oliver. But what she didn't know was that Sandra, the housekeeper, had overheard part of the conversation upstairs, and that tomorrow this information would reach Victoria's ears. Meanwhile, in Oliver's room, the boy was leafing through a book he had found by chance under his bed, a book about animals with names in 6 different languages, which a certain former university professor had left there on purpose. Cat, chat, gatto, katza, he whispered, each word sounding like music to his ears. Because sometimes the most powerful revolution does not begin with confrontation, but with whispers in the dark, unexpected alliances, and the patience of those who know that the most devastating storms are always preceded by the quietest calm. The next morning, Sandra knocked on Victoria's office door with an expression that mixed urgency and malicious satisfaction. "Ms. Blackwell, I need to tell you something about the cleaning lady." Victoria looked up from her financial reports, already irritated by the interruption. "What is it now, Sandra?" "Last night, I heard her on the phone. Talking about college, research, scientific articles." Sandra paused dramatically. "She mentioned something about being a doctor." Victoria blinked several times, processing the information. "Doctor? Luana?" "Yes, ma'am. And she talked about 40-something cases of children like Oliver. I think she's lying about who she is to get close to the boy." Victoria's mind raced. A cleaning lady who taught languages, who talked about academic research, who got Oliver to talk. The pieces began to fit together in a disturbing way. Call her here. Now. 15 minutes later, Luana entered the office and found Victoria standing behind her desk, laptop open, with an expression she had never seen before. "Sit down," Victoria said, her voice icy. Luana obeyed, maintaining the outward calm she had perfected over the past few months. "You lied to me," Victoria began, turning the laptop toward Luana. On the screen, a Columbia University page displayed Dr. Luana Santos' academic profile, with an impressive list of publications and awards. "I never lied, Ms. Blackwell. I just didn't offer information that wasn't requested." "Not requested." Victoria slammed her hand on the table. "You led me to believe you were just an uneducated cleaning lady, when all this time you were a doctor of linguistics specializing in autistic children." "And why would that matter?" Luana asked, her voice remaining calm. "You made it very clear from day one that I was invisible. That my job was to clean and not to have an opinion. That people like me had nothing of value to offer." Victoria felt something uncomfortable stir in her stomach. "That's different. You should have told me about your qualifications." "What for? So you could humiliate me in more creative ways? So you could tell me that even with a PhD, I was still just an employee?" That's when the door opened and Oliver came running in, followed by Dr. Chun. "Luana! Luana!" Oliver shouted in Portuguese, then switched to French, "Je apres une nouvelle chanson." And then to Spanish, "Puedes enseñar más palabras?" Victoria was paralyzed. Her son, who hadn't spoken in 2 years, had just switched fluently between 3 languages in the same sentence. Dr. Chun approached calmly. "Victoria, I need to show you something." He placed a tablet on the table, showing videos of Oliver from the last few days. "Luana has been discreetly recording Oliver's progress under my medical supervision." In the first video, Oliver counted to 10 in German. In the second, he recited the alphabet in Mandarin. In the third, he sang a children's song in Arabic. 7 languages, Dr. Chun continued. In 3 weeks. Oliver not only speaks, he understands complex grammatical structures. His cognitive ability is exceptional. Victoria looked at her son, then at Luana, then at the videos. How is this possible?" "Because he was never severely autistic," Luana replied, standing up and kneeling beside Oliver. "He had selective mutism caused by trauma and emotional isolation. When he found a safe environment and a form of communication that made sense to him, he blossomed naturally." Oliver turned to his mother and, for the first time in 2 years, looked directly into her eyes. "Mama," he said in English, "Luana dice che soy intelligent." Then he switched to Italian. "Lei mi ha insegnato che posso parlar quando voglio." Victoria felt tears well up. Her son, whom she had protected as if he were broken, was standing there speaking with an eloquence she had never seen in children his age. "Oliver," she whispered, kneeling down as well. You could always talk?" "Yes, Mama. But you always looked sad when I tried. So I stopped." He switched to French. "Mais Luana m'écoute. Elle comprend." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Victoria looked at Luana, who was watching her with an expression that was not one of victory, but of deep sadness. "I didn't know," Victoria murmured. "I really didn't know." "I know you didn't," Luana replied softly. "But now you do. The question is, what are you going to do with that information?" Dr. Chen placed his hand on Victoria's shoulder. "Oliver needs to continue with Luana. His progress is extraordinary, but interrupting now would be devastating." Victoria looked at her son, who was playing with colored blocks while counting in Japanese, then at Luana, who had transformed her home without her noticing. I need to apologize to you," Victoria said, her voice breaking. "And I need to ask you to stay. Not as a housekeeper, but as Oliver's teacher. As the person who gave me back my son." Luana smiled, not a smile of victory, but the smile of someone who finally sees a child being seen for who he really is. "I'll stay, but on one condition. Oliver is not a miracle or a success story. He's just a brilliant child who needs to be loved for who he is, not for what he can do." As Victoria nodded, finally understanding, Oliver approached and took both women's hands. "Mama Luana," he said in Portuguese, "are we a real family now?" There, at that moment, 3 lives were changed forever, proving that sometimes the greatest revolution doesn't happen in courtrooms or headlines, but in the silence of a child who finally finds his voice and in the heart of a mother who learns to listen. 6 months later, the Blackwell mansion had been transformed into something completely different. What was once a silent, cold house was now overflowing with the sounds of laughter, conversations in multiple languages, and most importantly, Oliver's melodious voice echoing through the hallways. "Mama, I learned a new word in Swedish today," Oliver shouted as he ran toward his mother, who was working on her laptop on the porch. "Kärlek means love." Victoria smiled, a genuine smile that rarely appeared before Luana. "That's beautiful, my love. And where is Ms. Luana?" "She's recording another video for the channel." Oliver replied excitedly, switching to Spanish, "Hoy tenemos muchos estudiantes nuevos." The YouTube channel Learning with Oliver had become a global phenomenon. In just 4 months, more than 2 million people were following Luana's classes, where she taught language development techniques using Oliver as an inspiring example. Donations and educational partnerships had already generated more than $500,000 for the foundation Victoria had created specifically to support neurodivergent children. But the channel's success was just the beginning. Harvard, Stanford, and Columbia had entered a bidding war to hire Luana as a tenured professor. 3 publishers fought for the rights to her book, The Language of the Heart: How Multilingualism Transforms Special Children, which became a bestseller before it was even released. "Dr. Santos," Victoria said that afternoon, using the title she now insisted on pronouncing with pride, "the foundation has received 5 more requests from public schools wanting to implement your method." Luana, now wearing elegant clothes that Victoria had insisted on buying, smiled as she organized the teaching materials. 15 schools in 6 months. "I never imagined we would have such reach." "And Sandra?" Victoria asked, referring to the former housekeeper who had been fired after trying to sabotage Luana's work by spreading malicious rumors among other employees. "I hear she's still looking for a job." Apparently, high society families don't want to hire someone who has a reputation for gossiping about their bosses on social media, Luana replied without malice. "Karma has its own schedule." Dr. Chen appeared on the porch carrying a bulky briefcase. "Ladies, I have incredible news. Your article has been accepted in Nature Neuroscience. What's more, the American Pediatric Association wants you to present your method at the national conference." Victoria took a deep breath, watching her son playing in the garden, chatting fluently with the gardener in German. 6 months ago, she believed Oliver would never have a normal life. Today, he was more articulate than most children his age. "You know what impresses me the most?" Victoria said, turning to Luana. "It's not just the languages or the academic success. It's that Oliver finally has a sparkle in his eyes. He's happy." Luana nodded. "Children like Oliver don't need to be fixed, Victoria. They just need to be understood. That evening during dinner, Oliver made a special announcement. Mama, Ms. Luana, I wrote a thank you letter. Can I read it? The two women looked at each other, curious. Dear Mom and dear Ms. Luana, Oliver began, his voice clear and confident. Before, I felt like I was trapped inside a glass box. I could see everything, but no one could hear me. Ms. Luana didn't break the box. She taught me that there never was a box. And Mom, thank you for letting her teach me that I've always been perfect just the way I am. Victoria couldn't hold back her tears. Neither could Luana. 3 months later, Luana was on the main stage at the International Special Education Conference, in front of 5,000 educators from around the world. Oliver, now 8, was at her side as co-presenter. My name is Oliver Blackwell, he said into the microphone, his voice echoing throughout the auditorium. A year ago, doctors said I would never speak normally. Today, I speak 9 languages because a woman believed I had a voice from day one. She just had to teach me how to use it. The audience rose to a standing ovation. Victoria, watching from the front rows, looked around and saw tears in the eyes of hundreds of educators, parents, and therapists. Here was living proof that labeling a child as limited is often the greatest limitation we can impose on her. When Luana took the microphone, her voice came out steady. A year ago, I was invisible in this society. Today I am here not because I have changed, but because someone finally decided to see me. The same thing happened with Oliver. He always had this ability. I just created the safe environment for it to flourish. After the lecture, a journalist asked, Dr. Santos, when did you know that Oliver was special? Luana smiled, placing her hand on the boy's shoulder. The first day he looked me in the eye. All children are special, some just need different languages to show their magic. Today, 2 years later, the Oliver and Luana Foundation has transformed the lives of more than 10,000 children across the country. Victoria has become a passionate advocate for inclusive education, and Luana has proven that sometimes the greatest revenge against prejudice is not to destroy those who underestimate us, but to build something so beautiful and impactful that they have no choice but to recognize our greatness. If this story of overcoming adversity and recognition touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that remind us that a person's true value can never be measured by the color of their skin, the clothes they wear, or the work they do, but by the difference they make in the lives of others.